Welcome to Books and Brunch with BYTA. I'm Jana Long, the Executive Director of the Black Yoga Teachers Alliance. And I just want to thank you for choosing to join us for an hour on this Sunday afternoon. And if you are a BYTA member, I'd like to say we love you, we thank you, and we appreciate you. If you're joining us for the first time, Books and Brunch with BYTA are quarterly events that are produced and hosted by BYTA members. We are delighted to bring authors of books on yoga, meditation, contemplative practice, spirituality, lifestyle, and wellness onto this platform to engage with our community. Now, if you're a member of BYTA and you'd like to produce one of these and host it, and we were talking behind the scenes saying this is great training, professional development for doing presentations. So if you're interested in producing and hosting a Books and Brunch with BYTA with the author of your choice, send us an email at blackyogateachers@gmail.com. This event is being recorded, and the link to it, give us about a week or so, it will be available on the BYTA website, along with other recordings of events that BYTA has done. And before we get into today's discussion, I always have to the folks behind the scenes, primarily Galanda Brooker, who serves as the co-director and technical advisor for Books and Brunch, and Lorenzo Wilkins, our creative services director, who designs all of our beautiful graphics. And I think he might have even composed that music that you all heard as we were coming in. So I just always have to give them a shout out. And of course, the BYTA Board of Directors and Advisory Council, who are just the most amazing human beings I have ever worked with. So today's event is different from what we've done in the past. Today, we're bringing poetry and art to the platform for the first time. And since doing this, it sort of opened up a contemplation about how we might broaden the presentations and the discussions on this platform. So once again, if you have any thoughts about that, you should shoot us an email. And do I need to say the email address again? blackyogateachers@gmail.com. Write to us and let us know what you think. Today's presentation is the brainchild. This is who got all of this started. Today's host and producer, Charlene Marie Muhammad. Now I've got to read Charlene's brief bio, so bear with me. Charlene Marie Muhammad is a traditional healing practitioner who focuses on supporting clients with a practical application to optimal health by using the healing tools that she has grown to embrace in her own personal life: herbal medicine, nutrition, and yoga. Charlene is also an early childhood educator and childbirth doula. A graduate of Cornell University, Charlene holds a Master of Science degree in herbal medicine from Maryland University of Integrative Health and is a licensed dietitian. Charlene is also a certified yoga therapist through the International Association of Yoga Therapists, and she serves as the secretary to the Black Yoga Teachers Alliance Board of Directors, and she is an amazing person, one of the people, in my view, of the utmost high degree of integrity, and she walks with purpose through this world. So thank you and welcome, Charlene.
Greetings and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm humbled by all that you said and am honored to be here. I hold the Black Yoga Teachers Alliance close to my heart because I think we do good work and we're building such a wonderful Sangha or community. So I have the pleasure of introducing our two artists, guest artists today, and I'll start with Pamela. Pamela Stokes Eggleston is the Chief Creative Officer of Yoga to Sleep, a venture of empowerment through sleep, holistic living, rest, restoration, and yoga, and co founder of Retreat to Spirit, where she conducts trauma informed training and soulful workshops. A certified yoga therapist, and meditation and yoga educator, energy worker, and business consultant, Pamela began her writing journey at the age of 5 and has written for several publications, including Military Spouse Magazine, Yoga Therapy Today, and Yoga Journal. Pamela is currently serving as the director for the Carpalo School of Integrative Yoga Therapy. Welcome, Pamela.
Thank you.
And now introducing delightfully a real sister for both Pamela and I, her biological sister, my soul sister, Lynn Melgrove. And Lynn is a wildlife illustrator who has endeavored to convey the beauty and the magic of the natural world since 2007. She lives in Central Maryland, where she loves to walk in the woods, especially on windy days. Lynn has a Bachelor of Arts from the Pennsylvania State University and an MFA from the Savannah College of Art and Design. Welcome, Lynn. All right, so let's get in it. So I'm going to start with a couple of questions for Pamela. And how long have you been creatively writing poetry?
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Charlene, and thank you for that question. I have been writing poetry since the age of 5. And albeit some of it good, some of it bad. So whatever's good and whatever's bad and how you view that is anybody's, opinion or guess, but I have been actively writing since I was a child, and I was inspired to do so based on my mother being an English teacher, in part based on her allowing me to read what I pretty much wanted to read, so there was no restrictions in that way, and also as a creative outlet. So she had me in like Girl Scouts, playing instruments. I was doing, tap dancing, ballet dancing. So a lot of things because I had that type of energy. And so I think that my poetry came from that as a child. And I have to be honest, I didn't continue it on through, I haven't been writing consistently in that way. But it was a spark in me that was creative that every now and again I would return to. And I kind of stuck with it.
Okay, so you haven't, been consistently writing, but what prompted you to inspired you to write this particular book of poetry?
Hmm. I was going through a lot of like emotions. We had COVID. I had started writing consistently through Substack, which they call a newsletter, but I kind of feel like that's a blog.
Mhm.
And I use that platform to figure out, decipher, unpack my emotions through the pandemic. And I had subscribers talk to me about how a poem helped them get through something during COVID, or how it inspired them to speak to their parents or anything like that. And I kept going because it felt nurturing and nourishing for me to write in that way. And it didn't feel like a job. So, how sometimes you'll do a newsletter or something and you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. It has not, in the 2.5 years, almost 3 years I've done it, felt like a job at
Mm.
all. And so some of the poems that I put there were definitely from the heart, definitely kind of woke me up in the middle of night, definitely sat in me for a while for me to then be able to say, okay, do I even want to share this with the world?
Mm.
Because some of them were vulnerable to me. So in that way, I was getting in my own way, So I had so many people asking, when is the book coming out? When is the book coming out? I remember telling Lynn that, like, when is the book coming out? I was like, I don't know. I'm writing, it was sort of me healing and processing what was going on during COVID, how I was navigating that, how I was looking at changing or altering or shifting my yoga and meditation practice. It was all the things.
Neat. And I'm going to get back to peeling that back a little bit, how that manifests in your poetry. But I'm going to shift now just to ask Lynn a couple of questions. So, Lynn, what inspires your art?
Thank you for having me again. That's a big question, but mostly it's nature. This was a little bit of a departure for me. If you look at my site, it's animals that inspire me the most. It's their spirit. But I think I really thought I want to help my sister, and she has really good poetry. I want to give her her due with some good illustrations from me. And so it's mostly nature, and it's mostly trying to find what we all talk about, I guess, is just a solace, just the remember that we are part of that circle of life, that big, nature, and you need to go out there and be a part of it.
Is this the first time the two of you have collaborated on a project together?
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No,
we did another book, self-published, called Pains of the Heart, PANES.
Oh,
and it was all different types of love. I did do poetry with her. I had done some of my own poetry. And so we just combined poetry, and I did illustrations for that as well. Wow. So it was like passion, family love, that kind of thing. And we'd have different sections of that sort. But this time I'm like, let's know who's the writer and know who's knows how to draw. So, so we don't get mixed up. So this time, yeah, we did it a little better, a little more, running smoothly this time.
Okay, so with that, let's take a look at some of your work and what inspired your vision for the cover of the book. It's such a beautiful cover that I thought maybe you'd walk us through that process.
Yes, let me get this up for you here. So what we have here is the sketch that I showed Pam, very rough sketch. Because the main title, and really the purpose I understood of this book, is to help people center themselves in all the chaos that's happening right now. And there's a lot to go around. So that was the birth of that, a storm, just center of a storm, clear. And here we go. So I work in Photoshop and digital. And so this is what I would call the digital rough. I'm almost there. This I show to Pam again, or show to the client. And you get more, okay, this is what I'm going to have here before I color it. And then here's the cover.
Wow.
So if you take a look back in the drawing here, just a second, this is a pretty big drawing. It's about 18 by 24. I draw pretty large. I couldn't really think of what to do about pendulum, that word pendulum, because it kept coming back to a grandfather clock. And I just didn't know how to fit it in. And I still think this could have worked too. Like, it wasn't bad, but when I was like, wait a minute, just put a beam of light just going straight down to the orb in the mind there. And that's how we came up with this.
It's beautiful. It reminds me of just opening up of that crown chakra. Mm-hmm. And that is a lot of balance that comes from the crown chakra as well. Mm-hmm. Now, I know you also did a particular image in there that opens up part 3 of the book that's called Spirit and Soul. And Is this a self-portrait or a composite of you and Pamela together?
It wasn't meant to be that way, and maybe subconsciously. I really just wanted to make sure with all the images that you could see a person of color
Mm-hmm.
in them. And this is a woman, and I thought of a Black woman, but I did not do that purposefully.
Mm-hmm.
But that is, I mean, that's happened before when I do people. Like I said, I don't do people a lot. So I had references and everything, but it, turned out that it was just a composite of references that I found. But probably I will give it to you. It might have been a subconscious thing, but because I didn't even think about that until you said that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so these are the other ones. This is the first section and the second section in the third section.
Yeah, and I love that all of the images are looking upward or inward, so that pendulum, that crown chakra. And this one reminds me of really the third eye there, because it looks so introspective. And then you have the star right there on in that third eye section, just beautifully done.
And purposely, I did want black and white for the interior, although yes, that was cheaper. But I think that actually sometimes black and white is underrated, and it makes more of a punch. It gives more of an impression. One thing I want to say too, as an illustrator, people, it is a special class of artists, because we don't just express, we're trying to illuminate something, hence illustrator.
Mm-hmm.
And the illumination, I think, bears in this conversation, because that was originated by priests and monks. They did it as a holy activity. So maybe this was more coming back to the roots. This was, a kind of difficult assignment for me, as Pam knows, because I was just used to doing animals so much. But this was definitely more conceptual, but I'm glad with the results.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Lynn. So I want to get a little bit deeper into Pamela's, into some of the themes of the book. And what I found is the central yoga philosophy theme is playing in your book. So if you think about Patanjali's yoga philosophy and the 8 limbs, particularly around the yama and the niyama, and the principles of self-restraint with this is the yama, and self-reflection or observation of the niyamas. I'd like to explore that a little bit in some of your poetry, if you don't mind. Sure. And let's look at the fourth one, the fourth niyama of Svidhyaya, which is translated as self-study. So in the writing of the book and creating the images, to you both, did you both experience this concept of Svidhyaya, this self-study? I think Lynn alluded to it a little bit. What do you think? Did you consider that? In what ways, perhaps?
I'll go first, and I'll say the whole book, the whole process was a process of self-study for me. And I believe in Svadhyaya because I think it's important for us as yoga teachers and practitioners to always have that at the forefront of what we're doing. So even in my work of writing and examining how the poems were being written in me, and how the poems, I was writing the poems, and what in me, what light, what the creator put in me to guide me to write the poems was a thing for me. And the self-reflection was a huge part of that. So for instance, when I was tapped on the shoulder at 3 o'clock in the morning, tips, here, write this down. And I was fighting. Like, I'm tired. I'm in menopause. I don't want to wake up and I don't want to write this. And really that was more obedience for me, but also a self-reflective way of, okay, what is it that you're really fighting? What is it that you are really going up against as it relates to your edges, your samskaras? What is it that you're reticent about? And once I realized that and became curious about that, so that inquiry is really important. then there was a santosha. There was an acceptance of an allowing and receiving.
Beautiful.
Well, I don't know about all the terminology
Mhm.
of the yoga world, and it was not explained to me. When Pam gave me the brief, it was not explained to me that way.
Mhm.
But I appreciate the similarities. And so any indication that we were that close in tandem is great. Because she told me none of what y'all just said. But it just worked out.
But in your own level of self-study, you sort of alluded to it when you were speaking about you weren't used to creating human figures. So how did that
I
sort
was
of,
out of
yeah, how did you open up for that? What was that like?
I don't know if this is good or not, but I know I did feel the resistance, I guess, if
Mhm.
that's the term. And I just fought through it. I mean, sometimes I come back to it, but sometimes I just, again, with the references, I get references for human beings
Mhm.
and animals, but I do that. And sometimes I'd just loosely just draw the faces. I had done that before, but it'd been so long. It's been so long. So I was harping on actually doing a specific face, doing a specific, and whether that was appropriate or not to do a specific face. I was trying not to, because I want everybody to kind of see some of themselves in some of these images there. So then once I realized, oh, it's not a specific face, I relaxed a little bit. It became easier to find concepts that involve people when I did that. But I just keep looking, I just keep trying. That's what I've learned with my work.
Okay, that's very yoga.
It is. It's very yoga. And Lynn
Yeah.
was bumping up against some scars because she was like, I don't like this. We were going through that and I was internally rolling my eyes, you know.
Well, the last one was spirit, right? And
The
I
last
kept
one.
in my notes putting energy now, and you said that's a little different.
Because it
And
was right. And we were going, yeah, that was a whole nother, we don't have
yeah,
like going
so
back and forth between this is spirit, this is soul, this is energy. And you were like, this is energy. And I was like,
because I was about to have somebody like with this just running through something running through them like an energy, like a river.
I see.
She was like more spirit. So I was like, okay.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes terminology can trick us up, and it is around having a conversation to see that the nuancing of words are really a reflection of each other. So they mirror each other in different ways. There's congruency. And that's what shows to me the congruency of your work, of Pamela's words and your images. You came to that, very well to me. All right, so Pamela, let's see if we can have you read something. I'd like you to read the poem Queen of Cups. I think it's a beautiful svidhyaya or self-study that also speaks to the practice of tapas, which is purification. So would you share that particular poem with us?
yes, I'd love to. And I love I love the fact that Charlene ties all this yamas and niyamas to my work, because like Lynn said, I don't know that I consciously did it. I really can't say that I consciously did it, but I am a yogi. So here we go. Queen of Cups. Loving you is difficult. Loving you is a breeze. Love, then, is a sensual force, a creative power, a consciousness of oneness, a feeling, an action, a reaction. Loving me is hard. Loving is easy. Love, then, is purpose and action, imagination, patience, kindness, humility, gnosis. Loving myself is rough. Loving myself is smooth. Tarot reader pulls the Queen of Cups. The message is, love cannot be rushed, pushed, or pulled. It has to flow as the rivers and streams flow in its own dictate.
Ashe, ashe. So just some of your reflections on, there's such a full circle message in that to me. And what inspired that particular poem?
Well, I'm a Pisces, I'm a water sign. And I also practice tarot, and the cups, the suit of cups is a water suit, and the Queen of Cups is a powerful card. It's how can we fully enmesh in the flow of life? And Hatha yoga teaches us that. Hatha yoga, sun, moon yoga teaches us to ride the waves. So how are we riding these waves? How are we riding the flow of life? That was a constant for me as I was compiling the book. Is how can elements help us to ride these waves, to go with the flow?
Mm-hmm.
As my friend Tony often says, you know, when we're
Okay. Pamela, I think you're frozen a
on
little.
a bad thing,
Yeah, there you go.
we want to get over that, right?
Mhm.
And we, instead of sitting in it and allowing for perhaps the message, because out of the mud comes the lotus. At some point, you know, we're going to be doing this. And so that was an exploration of that. I think that was the energetics behind the crafting of that poem.
Thank you. I had another thought, but let me just go with that. My first thought first before I go to some other specific questions about the poetry. Because in your introduction, you discussed the pandemic like a roller coaster of the past 3 years. And then you note there's a significance of the number 3 in indigenous spiritual practices. It's also significant in the formatting of your book in 3 parts. Was that intentional in 3 stages? Could you
Yes.
sort of expound on that a little bit?
Yes, it was intentional. The number 3 is one of my favorite numbers, and it is about creativity. The number 3 is about harmony. In the major arcana deck of a tarot deck, that card is the Empress, and you'll often see the Empress is a woman who is full of creativity. She has pomegranates on her garment. She's got you know, nature all around her. And so you can find, and I think this is why Lynn and I also work well together, because she does a lot of stuff with nature. In nature will show you creativity. Nature will show you how to birth something, how to live in something and grow, and then how to die, and how to be reborn. So you have the 3: birth, death, and wait a minute, I'm saying birth, life, and then death, right? Those are the 3 things that we have to do. So there's lots of 3s. And that's the part of creation. So that was definitely very intentional for me as I put the book together.
Thank you. Thank you. And so again, as people are exploring your work, I'm hoping that they read through it, enjoy it, just allow the poems to sort of resonate with you, and then go back and unpack some of these deeper truths, these sort of hidden nuggets that you gave us. Okay, so let's talk about seeking to find balance of emotional healing. That sort of permeates through the book as well. And for example, you mentioned this in your first essay of the book, and I also think explain sort of the format, how there's essays as well as poems. And then you also sort of talk about this particular concept of balance in the heart's expanse.
Yeah, I did essays for each section, and then the poems, and then practices, excuse me, at the end of each of those 3 sections, for time for reflection, because I think poetry can be used in meditation. And you know, I've done that often, where I'm like, oh, let me read something by Langston Hughes, is very powerful, African-American writer, also like Edgar Allan Poe, Rita Dove, who's another Nobel poet laureate, I believe, African-American poet, and how there's reflection in that, for us to kind of contemplate. So the emotional piece just kind of came in through all of what I believe I was dealing with and the collective was dealing with during the 3.5 years of the pandemic, or what people were choosing not to deal with, right? So it was a lot of avoidance. So that's in one of the cliches, right? There's a lot of avoidance of whatever the avoidance was, not wanting to stand 6 feet apart, right? Not wanting to wear a mask or something like that. There was a lot of fear enmeshed. There was a lot of rethinking how I love people, how I show up in love, I believe.
Mhm.
And I was going through this myself. There was a lot of, I believe, holding space or trying to conceptualize in this newer paradigm as we shift into a newer way of being, how to hold space differently, how to create sacred spaces for people. And so for me, the emotional, it was a roller coaster. It was, I'm angry, I'm tired of, why are we still dealing with this? I want to go fly somewhere. I'm going to stay with my practice. I don't want to do my practice, but I'm going to hit the mat anyway. There was a lot of that influx for me as it relates to emotional balance. And during the pandemic, I lost my great uncle during that time. And I lost my mother-in-law to COVID, actually. And so some of that sparked I'll say, need in me to look at life like we have no guarantees for the next day. You know, we're all dying. And also, what can I do in this moment to be more present? It actually, you know, we talk about that often. We often talk about be here now. You know, we're quoting Ram Dass, but how is the low point of the flow of the water allowing me to be present? And can I see that? And that's hard often because you don't want to, you know, you're in your grief period or mourning period. How can I be present in those spaces? That's what I was discovering for myself. And quite frankly, I'm still learning. I'm still discovering that.
Yeah, and I think what resonates in what you're saying now and what I hear resonates in your poetry and in your essays is that you are, in your work and in your contemplative sharing, you are going through those 3 stages. You know, there's this beautiful flowering that happenings of life. There's rebirth, and then there's times where you're exploring just the depths of death and dying, or things changing, like you said, as the world is not the way it was, and so we had to let that go, you know. So let's look at another poem that you have where reminds me of Satya, the Yama of truthfulness, and that's the poem "What a Great Story."
Okay.
Is this a poem a reflection of your navigating adversity through the written or spoken word?
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, I kind of tricky the reader because you see, what a great story, exclamation point. You think it's going to be a great story, and it kind of isn't. I mean, it is, yeah, it's a journey. It's a sojourn through the ebbs and flow of life. It's a journey. It is about adversity and subsequently Satya.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And what is real? What is real? So there was a lot of talk about COVID not even being real, you know, and there's a lot of talk about fake news and all of this stuff, and it was sickening.
Yeah.
And to me, at times, I was processing that, and also realizing that, and yoga teaches us this, but you have to return to the practice all the time because yoga teaches us to hold space for people. They're not where you may be. Remember when you first became a yoga teacher and you wanted to share it with everybody and people were
Right.
looking at you like you were crazy? you know, it's always returning to kind of that energy.
Yeah.
And so I have to remind myself, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make them drink.
Right, right.
That person has to get whatever their enlightenment is, whatever their samadhi is going to be, whatever on their own. They may come to you for assistance and allow for that space as you're holding it for that person to come to you, but not to kind of do this. Even if you understand that they may be living in falsehoods, they may not be living in their true, authentic nature. Because I mean, we can discern that, but also we have to be careful, I think, judging people and discerning people.
Right.
Two different things.
Mm-hmm.
So there's discernment and judgment. And it is a fine walk, but it's discernment is, here are the facts, this is what I know, this is the kind of this, and this is, and then maybe there's some empathy and compassion sprinkled in.
Yeah, I think with discernment, as you're speaking, it's an opportunity to coach one another into a deeper thinking and deeper reflection. So judgment would be telling folks what they should and should not be doing, whereas discernment is that curiosity and learning what is that other person's in a dialogue, what is their thought pattern, where are their truths coming from, and a sharing that happens that way. And that, I think, happens in poetry because it is like that. It's a you're sharing just your own thinking pattern, and in that it coaxes or it triggers in the reader, hopefully, that they could begin to explore their own thoughts like that.
That's what I would hope. I think any writer, any artist needs to speak truth to power, period. So even if it's not, sometimes, and that's where the edges come up, because even if it's not your truth, what is your obligation to the world as an artist, as a writer, to allow for the download of the truth of what is Satya to then be shared with the world. And then the reader can say, okay, this is how I'm interpreting it. Like you've interpreted our art and our writing in different ways. And you know, maybe we can have a discussion around that, but the truth is the truth. The thing is there. And that's where I think bravery comes in to play, where courage comes into play. You have to be courageous to put your soul on paper and share it with the world.
Yes. And so
can I say something real quick? I do think it's courage, but I think what is courage? But you just pushing on when you're scared, you know? So
That's true.
Because I was like, oh yeah, well, a lot of times I'm just so uncomfortable, but then the results always, for the most part, are very nice. So it's worth it.
Push through.
Indeed. And so since you're back, Lynn, let's get to this question and I'll jump back to another one.
Okay.
So describe how reading poetry or observing your visual arts is a contemplative practice.
Well, I'll start with the way we organize the book. The illustration heads each section. I hope to get you in that state of mind as to what's to come for what the body of the section will be. And I think a lot of the visual, even art that I've seen it can be very meditative, is intentional or not. I think when people have a favorite, even like something as common as Starry Night, why are they staring at it? Something about it does something to them that they want to, really investigate more. So I'm hoping that when people look at particularly the ones on the inside, they see that starts them off, and the essay, and then the words kind of like, I do know mantra, kind of like that,
Mhm.
to help whatever you're going through, just whatever's happening. The practical nature of this is you can read that and see that and remember that
Mhm.
and carry that with you rest of the day.
Perfect. Yes, Pamela, for me, some of your poems, many of your poems are wonderful ways to set intentions before practicing yoga and even giving them as an offering before the start of a group class or your own practice itself, for sure.
Yeah, I've had some friends who bought the book. They're like, oh, I'm using it in my yoga as I teach.
Mm.
I'm like so happy to hear that. Yeah, it's for you, but it can be shared in a yoga class and or a workshop. So yeah.
It was that you got an email from a mother, right? From an autistic child's mother.
Oh, yes, this was beautiful. And this was, Charlene, I have to say this story. I'll do it very briefly. Something that I did not expect. And there's a lot of that happening with my book. But one of them was a woman who has a nonverbal autistic daughter. They used the book and they were sounding out my name and sounding out the poem. So one of her poems, and the little girl looked like me. She sent me a picture of her, and she's like about my complexion.
That's why she got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And she had her hair out, and they would point and sound words out. And her favorite poem was the natural hair haiku. So that's a very short poem, but so they would practice reading that natural hair haiku together. And so she tells me, yeah, the book we were reading before then was Howard Thurman's Jesus and the Disinherited. And I was like, and then she read my book, you know what I mean? So I was like, oh my God, I could have never in my wildest dreams imagined that the book would be used in that way. So I'm just thankful. I'm thankful. Yeah.
Yeah, there's, again, particularly thinking about a group yoga class or even in your own practice, when you're tripping over satya, truthfulness, and you don't want to deal with certain things, offering a poem, it sort of like gives folks permission. Let me just read this poem to you. Just gives you permission to allow you to push up against your edges, as you're saying, or just sort of let things go. There's a residency that happens that then you begin to not feel so isolated in your own thoughts and minds, and maybe even in your own heart. For sure. All right, I've got a couple more questions. Let's see if we can get to them. Another theme that I hear in your poem is around healing justice, right? And I think one of my favorite poems is Anonymity, which is that the Yama principle of ahimsa. So that the healing justice work of your poetry and just of your work in general, in your own mission and vision for your yoga therapy work, just share with us why healing justice, why the need for that, how did it sort of come across in your poetry?
There's always a need for it. We are people of African descent. We always need healing, and there always is going to be space for justice. And so when I'm looking at seva or service as it relates to anything I'm doing with Black folks, I'm looking at how simultaneously we can be healed. If you look at anything in the civil rights movement, and now there's talk about burnout and exhaustion as people protest the conflict in Gaza. How can we heal ourselves while we do that work of seva and while we do that work of healing justice? And so that's always going to be on my mind at the forefront. Like, how do it free us? As Sonia Sanchez says, right? How do it free us? And art can free us, poetry can free us, but also how do we weave that into the seva that we're doing in our communities, that we are doing with ourselves? How are we serving ourselves? So often we want to, as yoga teachers, say, I want to work with this population and that population. What are you doing? What is your yoga practice?
Right.
What is your self-contemplation? What is your self-inquiry? What is your practice of tapas or svadhyaya or, even ahimsa as it relates to non-harming? Are you harming your family members with your words? So poetry, I believe, allows us to contemplate all of these things. And I'm so happy that you picked up on that in the book, because, I kind of definitely, it's not a part of me. You can't separate it. It's like trying to take the soul out of a person, as it relates to healing justice in several works. So yeah, that I would say you can't get around that now. And we're in 2024. We're moving into the age of Aquarius. There's lots of upheaval and chaos and anarchy and tumult. And so words are spells
Mhm. Mhm.
and have power and have meaning and can uplift and help us. So in that way, healing justice needs the artists, the writers, the musicians, the yoga teachers, the yoga therapists, the energy healers to help us go and take these next steps towards more healing justice. Because that's not in my lifetime anyway, not be a thing that we need.
Facts. And what I like about this in this forum is that it's for people who are trying to do just that. Like,
Yes.
you got to take care of self too as you're helping other people. So, and get connected with other people who are doing the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, Lynn, just picking up not just the illustration in this book, but the beautiful illustrations that I know of that you have of the natural world. Can you relate those particular muses to healing justice?
I didn't at first. I mean, I come to this, I always thought my work, especially as a Black woman, you can't rightly tell what I do. Like, some artists, it's really on their sleeve. You can tell. But I'm doing animals. I'm doing animals, y'all. I'm not doing this social justice thing. What's been happening has been inadvertent for sure, but it's come up, it has bubbled up, I guess, more, and maybe that's better naturally than me forcing the issue and saying, look at this. So Pam does like an image that she told me about, she reminded me of recently, that I did do of George Floyd. And in regards to that, I'm just going to describe it. It's instead of George being there, it's an eagle, a tattered eagle under the knees. Because I still had to put animals in it somehow to make it make sense to me. But what I find is even if I do a cute panda, people see that and think, what's happening with the pandas? There's a kind of social justice there. They think, any chance I get, if there's, a special day for that animal, I try to do that. And it's usually a special day because it's dying, because we're doing something to it, So
that is justice. That's environmental.
Yeah, that's a kind of, an Earth Day as well. So, but that's not the main reason. It has come, and if it comes and I feel like I have something to say, I'll say it. But that is not my main reason for making my work.
Well, I pick up, and I've seen some of your work, so I'm going to encourage folks to go to your website, that the majesticness of the way you situate the animals in nature, to me, speaks a lot to that healing justice, that environmental justice. It's like, take a minute to look at what you're missing, or particularly during COVID. What I loved most about it is that we humans were in timeout and animals were free.
That's right. They had a little time. They had a little time to play. Yeah, that was great. I was enjoying that.
Yeah.
But that's true. Animals do what we have to fight to do naturally. That's what I admire about them. Animals do it. They don't need words. Honestly, I'm not saying that we're, underneath that, but I'm just saying they just don't need words.
Yeah.
They feel it innately.
Yeah.
Going back to poetry, and especially poetry, the abstraction of poetry is what allows you the thing that it's untethered in a way. It's untethered, unlike a formal document would be, on purpose, so you can read in it, so you can think, is that, whose face is that? Who is that? It's supposed to be something you can see something of yourself in, and related, again, always back to what's going on in your life. Abstraction in art, I used to despise. I really, I say that because I didn't get it until I've been doing this for so long, that the abstraction is a blessed release. Okay. I mean, you see people like, what is that red splotch? Or what is this poetry? It's only one word. It's only 2 words. What is this? This is boring. And it's like, ease yourself, man. Ease yourself.
Mhm.
Ease your mind a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what I respect abstraction. And that's why I respect poetry. I feel like that's what it's asking you to do, to slow down and really look
Mhm.
and process what you're reading. Whereas so much of what we're reading on a day-to-day basis is just like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, I appreciate it. We have to get back to the art of reading, and poetry. There is the art of reading. Right. Yeah. So Pamela, we don't have too much more time, but I know that you're hosting a gathering at the BYTA National Conference in August. Can you share a little bit about what's planned?
Yes, so I'm so excited to be hosting this poetry slam. We're going to be doing writing, improv writing. We're going to be doing sharings. We're going to be doing some poetry readings. The magnanimous Free Benjamin is going to grace her with a presentation. I think she's doing something, it's called vibrational soul music. So she has a whole presentation planned for that. So this is so exciting. Saturday night at Kripalu at the BYTA conference is going to be there, right? It's going to be fire. And I'm just so excited to host it. And I remember talking to Jana about, it's like, yeah, I'm doing this book. And Jana was like, yeah, you can, we're thinking about doing a conference. Maybe we'll do a poetry slam. And I was like, okay. And then I have to remember who I'm talking to when I'm talking to Jana, because she's got a long memory, as they say, like long memory. So, I don't know what it was, 9 months later, like a year later, she's coming back. Yeah, so okay, we're planning this conference, and I was like, oh yeah, we did mention that briefly. So, just circling back.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I'm so excited to be doing this. Free Benjamin is an amazing musician and artist. Her artistry and music is just so profound. It's very emotive. And so I'm hoping that that's inspiration for some of our burgeoning or even seasoned poets and poetesses that come to BYTA, who are also yoga teachers. So yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and if you have never, you have an inkling to write, or you've always been like, I would love to do that, but you're a little afraid, this is a good time to just come and explore. Absolutely. I'll be there.
Join us.
So how about we end, and maybe we'll have a few minutes for questions if there are any, but let's end our part of this discussion with the title of the book, the poem that titles the book, You Are the Pendulum. Would you mind reading that for us?
Not at all, not at all. You Are the Pendulum. I have to tell you something before I read it. I was looking for a title for this book, and Lynn said, just use one of the poems. I was like, oh, you're doing stuff, you're working.
Sometimes you psych yourself out.
You're working too hard, And so that's where we are. We are at, you are the pendulum. You are the pendulum. You are the movement. The earth feels you. It shifts you. You feel these currents. No one else does, though. They think you are crazy, but you sense the Schumann resonance. You feel it seated. You feel it beneath your bare feet. The souls tell you, remind you that Gaia is a living, breathing, evolving body. You are the pendulum. You are the ebb and flow, the alpha and omega, as above, so below. the symmetry of your own being in soul and aura. You feel the subtle shake of the night, waking you. It is your ancestors calling, calling. Maybe they are giving you a soft nudge to remember, remember, remember. And in the sweet remembrance, you are motion, emotion. You recognize the flow of life. This movement, this gentle shake is to notice, to witness that the mother moves with its dictates and yours. You are the pendulum.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Right, Miss Galanda, do we have any questions or comments before we close out our wonderful Books and Brunch with BYTA summer series?
No, not today. We just have just beautiful comments with the powerful imagery. Love to see the piece. We're on a timeout. The animals were free. So just confirming some of the themes that you all were speaking about today.
Well, that's great.
Wonderful. Is it possible to go full screen so we can see everybody's beautiful faces before we end? That's always nice.
Mm-hmm. And I will add that the image that Lynn spoke to, that I reminded her of the other day, when I saw it, I mean, I'm biased because I'm related. Okay. But the George Floyd image,
That's on Instagram.
yeah, that's on Instagram. That I was like, oh my God.
That took twice as long to do.
Really? And I remember you saying, Lynn, that you watched I didn't watch I have not seen the George Floyd video at all because
I had to use the image as a reference.
Yeah.
So it was very hard.
Yeah, watched it and did all of that stuff. But what I was saying is I could feel, I was going through a bevy of emotions with that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it too, and it's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So, okay, I'm happy. I'm happy you showed up in this hot summer day, wherever you are. I didn't get to see the chat, so I see all these, I wasn't looking at the chat, so I see a lot of comments and things here. Yeah.
Please, check out my site. I will be having a store shortly on that. Check out Buy Pam's book. All right, the link is in the chat, right? So come on now.
Come on now.
It's short. It's it's just enough. It's just enough to get you just to read something, get you going.
See how many flags I have? As usual.
All right.
Lynn is my cheerleader. Lynn is. Tamara Jeffries. Love you. Miss you.
All right, Jana, I'm going to turn it back over to you before we close out here. Got a minute. You're muted. You're muted, Jana. Muted, Jana.
I know. I was mouthing the words.
Oh, okay.
Turn on my mic. This has been fantastic. And when it shows up on the BYTA YouTube channel, I had to give Galanda a shout out in process because she has worked this, I swear it looks like a television show. We're getting better and better at doing these events. It takes time. We're not professional technological people, so but practice makes perfect. And that's what yoga is about. The primary thing is that sadhana, the practice, all the time, every day. Just loved what was elevated in this discussion. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Lynn. Bringing so much more understanding. In fact, my book is in the cart now. I just didn't want to mess up and try to check out because you got to do another step. But thank you all so much. This was a beautiful presentation today. And with lots of takeaways and lots for us to think about as we move forward with sharing this practice, thinking big and recognizing yoga, that yoking is life.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you.